Hey guys, and welcome to a team breakdown using the last team that you guys have seen the last couple of videos. So, a lot of streamers do this, a lot of YouTubers did this. I just want to give a quick breakdown. Obviously, I'm not going to be at the level that they are, but essentially, when you're kind of factoring into these teams, you got to look at some certain spreads and where you base some of the things off of. So the very first thing I think you should come up with is basically the core 2 or 3 Pokemon that you want and kind of what your goal was. So my goal was just to understand the meta, so I just looked at the tier lists. I saw what was the most popular Pokemon, and I just kind of looked at the most popular core and just copied it, which was Zapdos, Tapu Fini, Landorus. So between these three, you've got really good interactions here between Zapdos and Landorus. Clearly, Earthquake doesn't hit Zapdos, and the Zapdos covers a lot of the weaknesses for Landorus with its electric typing. You also have really good coverage on Landorus, and the Assault Vest keeps him tanky. He can U-turn out, and you can bring this core for almost any lead. Tapu Fini fills in the gaps there, and terrain is such a huge point in this meta. And my Tapu Fini build is pretty slow. It's the base speed, just 85. And what's really nice about it is you can ensure that you get one of your fake out people to come in, and if they have Tapu Lele, you can kind of negate the terrain with your own Misty Surge. Misty Surge is really good against some of the dragon types, and that's probably one of the reasons why we haven't seen a lot of dragons. They've gone down in popularity a lot simply because Tapu Fini just hoses them so hard. Like Como, you've got 4 times weak against the Moonblast, and its damaging ability, I forget the scales or whatever, is 50% weakened by Misty Surge. So unless they've got specific support for it, it's definitely keeping off. Even if you don't have Tapu Fini on your team, you should keep that in mind when drafting it. So I looked at like some of the sets and what was most common. Tailwind and Roost were almost Tailwind, Roost, and Thunderbolt were pretty much the core 3 moves on Zapdos regardless. Just good speed control. You don't have to rely on anything like Trick Room or Icy Wind or anything like that. Tailwind's pretty reliable, and with Zapdos' bulk, you can survive. And I ran Hidden Power Ice, but I didn't come up with this until later when I was looking for what my team needed. So I think really you don't want to like lock yourself into thinking, oh, I really need HP Ice or Heat Wave. Just like that move can really fill the niche that your team needs. And then Tapu Fini, we already talked about this a little bit. I originally had Icy Wind in here. I wanted to try it out, but most people I think I'd seen running Calm Mind in this slot if they were going like a Z move on the Tapu Fini or one of the berries. The reason I ran the Z move was also I switched. I had the Fairy Z, but realized that basically Fairy type has good coverage, but it doesn't have a lot of super effective hits. It's good against the Dragon types, but I'm already so good against the Dragon types already. They're just naturally not going to come in against me. So I realized I needed a little bit with the Water Z move. What it allows me to do is I have the spread move in Muddy Water, but I can turn it into a single target attack if need be. And they gave me a little bit more flexibility. And Taunt, later I came to realize, the role of this Tapu Fini, excuse me, was really supporty, and get chip damage in there, not really. The Calm Mindset wasn't what I was looking into. And then in terms of what I was looking here is just coverage on Landorus. Landorus is pretty flexible. I mean, Superpower is probably the other option that is most likely alongside the knockoff. You can also go Ground EMZ instead of Assault Vest or Choice Scarf or even Choice Band, potentially could work. But I ran Assault Vest. One of the common things with Incineroar, at least has been in the back, is running Assault Vest as well, which I think is pretty good, but I think Incineroar is just a very good pick at the moment, and like I said, there's in the videos, there's a lot of teams that are just specifically building to stop it. So one thing when you're considering Incineroar is whether or not to take Protect, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. So this is the core. In terms of the EVs, to be honest, I took them from other videos. But in doing so, like their rationale, like you can see, they're like hyper focused. It's like, okay, what am I doing here? It's using one of these Pokemon damage calculators. I just wanted to show you. I'm not going to do anything on my own simply because this team I did none of my own calculations, and I don't want to seem like I know what I'm talking about when really all I did was just look at other people's work. So Jack the Battler, for example, Erwin Cybertron, Zang, Wolf Glick, like if you guys follow these other YouTubers, they do a great job kind of breaking these things down, and I think you stand a lot to learn from them as opposed to me. However, so once I had this core, it's kind of about what was my game plan besides that. So, but the first Pokemon I came up with to fill in this was the Mega Kangaskhan, and the reason being is I was between Mega Kangaskhan and a Snorlax. And then I was looking at the Megas and just seeing like what other Mega that I'd want to fit in with a slot, and there really wasn't one that stood out to me. When you're running like Tapu Lele, you think Metagross or maybe Mega Mawile, Mega Tyranitar with the Lele or the Bulu. Like there's just a lot of synergies when it comes to like those team comps. But because this was kind of a flexible core and I didn't have a specific plan, I just wanted to run something that was straightforward and simple. I mean, it's Kangaskhan. You just attack, you get in there. And we talked about in the first video, I think it was, just needing more coverage with the Ice Punch as opposed to the Protect I think I had in there. And I haven't regretted that. Honestly, I think like with the way I'm playing this team comp, it's the right call. And I think that's the thing that you got to do when you're playing these out, is not just think about things in terms of like what's on paper good. Like the Protect and Icy Wind and different things look, and Discharge, for example, on Zapdos, they look a lot better until you get to like actually playing them, and you're like, in practice, this is what I needed more often. Then Incineroar. Put in here. So basically what I was trying to do here is, so what is going to beat my Zapdos, Tapu Fini, Landorus, Kangaskhan at this point, right? So other Landorus is pretty good against my team. Rock Slide is good against Zapdos. I do have the Fini protection, but other Landorus is something that was on my radar. Definitely Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko has a pretty good matchup against. He does good damage against Zapdos, like a Gigavolt Havoc, hits Tapu Fini hard, and although it's not like I can switch into a Landorus and cover my bases there, there's just it gets outsped, and it's something to think about, as well as some different niche picks that I wasn't expecting until I saw them. But essentially I wanted access to another Intimidate just because the prevalence of Landorus, and I knew that going in, and the typing really filled out the offensive niche that I was lacking, both Dark and Fire, and it's good typing coming in. Honestly, if I were to go back and look at this, I might trade out the Low Kick for Protect. I think I wasn't getting a lot of use out of my Low Kick because I already had a better Low Kicker in Kangaskhan, and Incineroar, ultimately I wasn't using it that much just simply because I think a lot of teams were teching for it with like Milotic and everything like that. So I think Incineroar is extremely useful, and I think I might try to use it in a team again, just because I think the typing is really strong, and as we saw in that last one, it can put you into some awkward situations. And I mean, I originally had Kartana on the team simply to fill out the typing. I specifically wanted a Steel type, and so what I did, is I just typed on here, looked for Steel type, and then looked at what I had available. And at the time I was saying, okay, Steel, Grass, that's perfect. I can run this, and I knew I wanted to be offensive. I knew I wanted to have that option, and Kartana looked really good. However, the only Pokemon that it really sat well beside was Tapu Fini, but Tapu Fini really wasn't putting a lot of offensive pressure or setup pressure. I wasn't doing something with it that generated the pressure that it needed, or like the setup. So I think Kartana, while a really good Pokemon, I particularly had trouble with it, and I think Kartana is actually in a decent spot. It's got a lot of good matchups. It hits like Tapu Fini for super effective. It hits Landorus for neutral damage. It's a Sacred Sword against Incineroar or Kangaskhan, for example, although there's Steel types running around. It's something that I definitely think more to be considered, and I actually think that my Lodic Kartana core is something to really look at if you're expecting a lot of Incineroars. But yeah, and I switched out to Aegislash, and to be fair, like I originally had Wide Guard. I don't think my team has that big of a problem with Wide Guard or with spread moves. There's nothing that I'm really losing outright to. So I switched to King Shield because I needed to get that form change back. But honestly, Aegislash did not do what I wanted to do. In retrospect, I would not have run Substitute. I probably just would not have run this Pokemon, to be honest. The rationale I had for it was that it's a special attacking steel offensive type, similar in design to Kartana. However, it's not as reliable in terms of the damage because I can't run the Choice Band or Choice Scarf or something like that I think I would want to fit into this slot. And instead I'm running this Ghost DMZ, which kind of conflicted with my Tapu Fini, but I ended up wanting to take both of them a lot of times because their type coverage was good together. So, and obviously I didn't tech much into the EVs. I just ran a base 250, 250, 254 set and just was like, okay, hopefully this works out. One of the reasons I did bring this in was because I was having some issues with Trick Room, but I don't think that this was a good enough answer. And to be honest, I think this team, the way it should deal with Trick Room is just playing better switches and maybe not as offensive, maybe a little more balanced. And the way that I was playing this wasn't taking that into consideration just simply because I wanted to be offensive with my team. But I can give you a little bit of a breakdown, just show you the stats here as you guys have seen. And in terms of the items, it's pretty straightforward. These berries are very strong right now. There's a lot of bulk going around. It's almost more important than the speed, just because there's a lot of ways to artificially modulate speed that are pretty consistent, like Tailwind, Trick Room, and Rain and even that Ice team we saw with that Sand Slash. There's a lot of ways that you can make these bulky Pokemon have artificially inflated stats, and speed especially. So, there's not a terrible amount of room, for example, like like the Whimsicott that we played against earlier. It's like that prankster ability is not nearly as important for a lot of these teams. There's just more consistency in having like a tailwinded team and being able to take advantage of that brief window because of how powerful the Pokemon are. That being said, I don't think there is no room for some of these niche teams, like the Minimize team that we saw, the Hail team, things like this. There's definitely some room for it. I don't think they're very consistent simply because of the power level of all these Pokemon in this format. That just shows you how dominant the Fairy typing is, really. Fairy and Steel are still very strong. And it's difficult between the special bulk of a lot of these Fairy types and the physical bulk of a lot of the Steel types, doesn't allow you to just stack up someone and, just set up like Xerneas, for example, that we saw in 2016. There's just no one that strong, that consistent, that it's that prevalent. You don't see a lot of Smeargles running around, for example, right? A lot of these guys are not doing as well. So, and that's pretty common for the open formats that don't include the Uber legendaries. So, I'll leave it at that for you guys. I'd like to hear your opinions about if you like this. What would you like me to go into? Basically, I learned the format through this and kind of see what I like and what I don't like. I think the next team that's going to be coming out is going to involve some Rain and trying out a different core. I don't want to it's not going to be a Rain only team, but it's going to have that component to it, and I think also a trick room component. So definitely going to be trying out some alternative ways of modulating the speed, and looking for a little bit of flexibility in that still, but not just this straight tailwind or bust kind of team comp that I have here. So yeah, thanks for listening, and let me know in the comments if you want to see things, any suggestions for upcoming team comps, or what I can do better in the videos. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.